I want to begin with your trip to Taiwan. There was one trip that was of a very low-profile nature that happened in 2021. And I'm just wondering what motivated you to fly directly to Taiwan to give briefs to the Taiwan government back then?
Yeah, 2021, I had visited in 2020 as the INDOPACOM Director of Intelligence, very quiet visit, and then 21 and 22. But the 2021 visit was much more high level because it had been something that the White House had directed, and I had been designated the briefer to brief President Tsai and her national security team on what we knew about China's intentions and their capabilities with regard to threatening Taiwan. And so it was a demonstration of how close the partnership was getting and the degree of openness and transparency in our information sharing. And we had a very, very straight and open conversation about really, really tough issues with regard to what China had been planning to do to hurt Taiwan through a number of different things, not just an invasion or a blockade as part of their option set, but other ways that the Chinese are trying to infiltrate Taiwan society.
That meeting is more initiated by the Taiwan's government, or it was actually more a joint effort or something that the U.S. government wants to do?
It was generally agreed that this would be a good idea, where President Tsai herself was interested in having an objective briefing that would review everything that we knew about a situation, of course, that she was in charge of managing. So it was her foresight and her willingness to do this, a demonstration of how her leadership style has really made a difference in terms of strengthening Taiwan's defenses.
So looking back from today, what has changed most in the threat picture, you think? Whether is it China's capabilities, or is it intent, or is it Taiwan's vulnerability?
Well, I think it's all interrelated. It's a dynamic thing, but the Chinese have not stopped, of course, with their massive modernization. Their spending on the military has doubled in the last 15 years. You see all of the advances in the shipbuilding, in putting satellites up into space, developing hypersonic weapons, drones, the list goes on. And so they're very serious about trying to become not just the strongest military power in the region, but ultimately their ambition is to become the strongest power on the planet. And so this is one of those things that, because Taiwan is so close, it's a real challenge. And so Taiwan has strengthened something that may have been considered a vulnerability before. They're still vulnerable, but there's a lot of work going on, and we need to continue that work. And that's one of the reasons why the defense bill in the Legislative Yuan needs to pass, because this is about protecting Taiwan against this threat, which they see every day. It's in your face. And so I think we are working well together to shore up Taiwan's strengths, and I think it's supremely important that we all work hand in hand to deal with the challenge of a rising and threatening China.
We bring up the defense legislative bill that is still currently in the debates in the Taiwanese legislature. Because of the delay and the drama that we are seeing right now, are you concerned what message would it send to the U.S. and U.S. government?
Yeah, I look at this and I scratch my head. The senior KMT leaders appear to be thwarting Taiwan's ability to defend itself against a clear and manifest danger. And either they're being naive about the Chinese threat, or they're being overly optimistic about what they can expect from China, or they're co-opted by China, which means that they're a proxy of the CCP. And that does not bode well for Taiwan if there are senior Chinese or senior Taiwan political leaders that essentially are under the thrall or the sway of Xi Jinping. And so this to me is very obvious. You need a full-fledged defense bill to pass soonest to be able to allow Taiwan to have an ability to strengthen itself against a very clear danger, and it's existential. This isn't a marginal issue with a crisis over here on the edge. This goes to the core of whether or not Taiwan's democracy will survive. This is between freedom and tyranny. The consequences and stakes are very high, and so I think that you will need to solve this political stalemate, soonest.
We see opposition senior leaders like KMT chair lady Chen Ing-wen, where she brings up like peace is actually something that she wants to work towards too. But in your previous capacity as the Indo-Pacific J2, I'm just wondering, what's the assessment even from right now when we talk about peace talks in across the streets?
I mean, talking with your friends and your adversaries is always helpful, so you don't miscalculate. You need to have those channels of communication open, but at the same time, you need to have a very smart hedging strategy, which is to say to protect yourself. If we've learned anything about a more dangerous, world that's volatile and uncertain, is that every government needs to figure out how it's going to be more resilient in the face of radical change and in many cases very dangerous looming challenges. And China's intent is not to shower you with more freedoms, right? The Chinese intent is to make you into another Hong Kong, right? And so this is what you face. I think Taiwan people understand it. And so it's about time that you move forward on your marks to be able to self-strengthen, all the while having, an ability to talk to everyone in your neighborhood.
I want to bring the interview back to when you talk about Taiwan's vulnerabilities. I'm just wondering, where do you think Taiwan is still most exposed, be it cyber, intelligence leaks, retired military networks, disinformation, or political division?
I think all of the above are concerns, and you have to strengthen your ability to have the counterintelligence capability, the law enforcement capability, the ability to identify disinformation, and for governments to be able to essentially clean the palette, which means to say that they should be disseminating the truth or puncturing the false narratives if they start to gain traction, which means delegating enough power to each of the individual agencies to be able to clean up issues that may be distorted or twisted. But at the same time, I would say that one of the biggest challenges today is the political division. If those political fights are preventing everyone from being safer, then they are the greatest threat. And so that needs to be resolved, and we have to figure out a way to come together for a common cause. The same issues in the United States as well. And that's the reason why my book title, Might of the Chain, it comes from the laws of the Navy. And it goes, on the strength of one link in the cable depends the might of the chain. Who knows when you may be tested, so live that you can bear the strain. And the point of it is that any single link, right, in your chain, in your society, can end up destroying much of what you need to do to unite together and interlink with somebody on your left and your right to be able to work together for what you need to protect and advance your society. And progress only comes when you can actually link as in a chain and then do the heavy lifting that's required in your particular area of the world. And in this case, you're dealing with a psychological, political warfare, economic warfare threat, and it's going to have to take many hands coming together to deal with that. And there are other transnational issues like climate change and pandemics and other things that also require multiple governments to link together to unite for common cause.
Well, I think Taiwan is usually faced with a situation where everyone is pretty divided on different issues. But the main things that we are seeing what's right now in the legislature is that where the national interest is still put at first. That is actually the issue right now.
The word that I use to describe what you're talking about is integrity. And so the subtitle of my book is Forging Leaders of Iron Integrity. And what integrity means is a very important word, and it kind of gets to what you're talking about. Because when you're acting with integrity, you're acting from a moral foundation, that you are operating in a values-based way, right? You are also honest and direct and transparent, and you're also uniting, not dividing, right? You're making something whole. Those are all the different sub-meanings of the word integrity. And what we're finding is that integrity at the individual level, you see some leaders that do not have integrity, and then you see some nations that are losing their integrity, right? And they're fragmenting in ways that are not good for the common person. right? And the collective. And so this is an issue where you need leaders that actually have strong, ironclad integrity to be your leaders, to deal with all these challenges, because if you aren't careful, then everyone will suffer from leaders of poor integrity, right? But everyone will benefit, and there'll be a virtuous cycle if you have leaders of integrity that are doing the right thing for the right reasons all the time.
I want to move on to President Trump has kept a rather strategic ambiguity alive, and many in Taiwan actually worried that U.S. support could become more transactional. So in your view, what is it Taiwan need to make itself not just defensible, but also strategically indispensable to the U.S.?
Yeah, that's really important. I do think that under this administration of the United States, demonstrating that Taiwan will continue its investments in helping to build up the semiconductor industry within the United States. That's a very important thing. That builds resiliency, right? Gives you some supply chain protections by being in different places and developing different skill sets. And I think that's a long-term trend, and that's a good thing. That's one way that Taiwan is becoming indispensable to the United States. At the same time, I think that Taiwan could probably talk more openly about what the world would look like if Taiwan is assimilated by China. Because ultimately, people tend to have these conversations about, well, why Taiwan matters. And it does matter in significant ways. There are strategic reasons why Taiwan, as the cornerstone in the first island chain, is key to freedom and democracy. And I think what you would find is that if Taiwan falls, that you would find all sorts of knock-on effects, strategic dynamics that would not be in anybody's interest, not the least of which would be democratic, nations. And so I think Taiwan should be a little more open about what would mean if Taiwan is taken over, because I think that stimulates the right conversation, and it gets people to think and imagine what a future world would look like, where all of a sudden, essentially, the floodgates open for Chinese expansion into all sorts of zones. I mean, think about it. Would Japan, as they consider the vulnerabilities of their southern flank, given Chinese assertiveness and aggressiveness and calling into question, the Ryukyus, whether or not Tokyo has sovereignty over that island chain, imagine how insecure they would feel. Would they consider going nuclear, right? Where would South Korea go, already talking about whether or not they need their own nuclear capabilities? So there's a whole nuclear proliferation front. There's a whole expansion that would occur in Southeast Asia, not the least of which the Philippines and the Pacific Island countries and beyond, with the large Chinese military that they've built up. And the economic consequences, I think, would also be severe. The loss of having a key trading partner, one of the top 10 trading partners of the United States. Taiwan's in the top 10. And what it would mean if that trading partner were to disappear overnight. That's very, very meaningful across lots of different sectors in our economy.
The Trump-Xi summit is actually coming up really soon. So how concerned are you that Taiwan will be discussed, and what's the nature of the discussion will be like?
I don't know where that conversation will go. I think there's room to be concerned that perhaps Taiwan will end up being simply seen as a chip on a board. At the same time, I think that the priority will be to focus on the trade deal and some economic arrangements that stabilize the Sino-U.S. relationship in a way that President Trump can tout to the American people as doing something good to provide at least some sort of foundation for a relationship that is otherwise very, very frazzled right now. And so I would be surprised if Taiwan was a core issue. I think, if anything, it might be talked about in very fringe terms. I don't think they want to spend time there, because I think the issue would be they're not going to make progress together on the Taiwan issue, right? There's a stalemate with regard to their positions, but you can make progress perhaps on export controls and what to actually trade, where the tariffs can be adjusted. Those kinds of things I think will dominate not just this one, but probably the whole series of summits that may exist over the course of 2026.
Because we've seen that right now in the Trump administration, because given the various conflicts or happenings around the world, be it Iran or be it in the South Americas and all. So this has also been focused, obviously, in the Indo-Pacific region. We see that Indo-PACOM has been quite rather stretched in that sense, and also trying to see how to work on the first island chain. Are you confident that we still have time to counter what we are seeing right now?
It will take a number of different democracies to continue to stay the course in a way where the relationship is widening and deepening all the time. Unfortunately, China is very adept at trying to co-opt political elites in some of these countries, and so all it takes is one election in some cases for the trend to reverse or slow down or simply stop where it is, and I think that would be strategically dangerous. And so we've seen some great progress. You look at Takaichi in Japan, the Iron Lady, willing to stand up for Japan and her interests and to take on China even in the face of economic penalties. That's a country showing its spine and showing a real sense of what is happening in the world and is standing up, right? And I think other countries are inspired by that. President Marcos has been trying to thread the needle and balance, relationships there, and is, I think, making some ground and doing some things that could be reversed with the next presidential election. A lot, I think, will happen with many elections in 2028. So stand by. But in general, your point is that a coalition of the willing, of trusting partners that are based on freedom and democracy, that have mutual interest in working together, that coalition needs to be strong and vibrant in the Western Pacific, and Taiwan is a central part of that coalition.
Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Great questions.
Okay.
Insulted by an American telling him that they need to, but the fact of the matter is they're working for Beijing.
I mean, Chinese has been very good in that. I mean, like,
yeah.
What actually was very, I don't know whether you have seen that scene on how.
想看最完整的新闻内容，记得下载TVBS 新闻网 APP。